physiological events involved in speech are difficult to observe, since most of the speech structures, such as the tongue, are hidden from view during speech production. In recent years, equipment has been developed for obtaining X-ray motion pictures. These movies, called cinefluorographic pictures, permit observation of the movements of structures which are normally hidden from view. In the study of speech, cinefluorographic pictures are usually taken so as to provide a side view of a person while he is talking.
Indoors, a division of white light into many beautiful colors. It takes the shape of a long round arch with its path high above and its two ends apparently beyond the horizon. There is, according to
this short film demonstrates the complexity of the speech process. It is obviously impossible to study movements of all of the structures involved at the same time. Speech physiology can best be studied by considering the various activities separately. In this film, we shall consider only one aspect of the process of speech production, the separation of the oral and nasal portions of the vocal tract. This separation is accomplished by the velopharyngeal mechanism located at the back of the oral and nasal cavities. The velopharyngeal mechanism consists of two primary structures. The first of these, the velum or soft palate, is attached at the front to the end of the hard palate and hangs relatively free at the back. The velum has muscle attachments from above, below, and from the sides, which provide for movement of this structure in all dimensions. The second structure of the velopharyngeal mechanism is the portion of the throat or pharynx located behind and above the velum. The pharynx is essentially a tube, which is open on the front side. In this diagram, the tube has been cut open so that a cross-section of the posterior pharyngeal wall and the inner surface of one of the lateral walls of the pharynx are seen. The pharyngeal tube is composed almost entirely of muscular tissue. There are muscle fibers running vertically up and down the tube walls, and others running from front to back through the walls. These fibers provide for a wide range of adjustments in the size and shape of the pharynx. Another structure, which is not a part of the velopharyngeal mechanism, but which is useful as a landmark, is the anterior tubercle of the atlas, the topmost cervical vertebra. This structure, which you will see in motion in subsequent film sequences, is the tongue. On the cinefluorographic film, we can identify the structures which have just been discussed. The velum, the posterior pharyngeal wall, the anterior tubercle of the atlas, and the tongue.
Say zop again, say noop again, say pat again, say zeep again, say neep again, say teej again.
Correct functioning of the velopharyngeal mechanism is important in speech production for two reasons. Closure of the opening between the nose and mouth is required for speech which is free of unacceptable nasal voice quality. When the velopharyngeal port is closed, essentially all of the sound produced by the larynx is transmitted through the oral cavity and radiated from the mouth. If, however, the port is open, a portion of the sound is transmitted through the nasal cavities, resulting in nasal resonance, which is perceived as nasal voice quality. In the following cinefluorographic pictures, a person with normal speech is first producing vowel sounds normally and then producing the same sounds with simulated nasal quality. On the latter sounds, an opening between the velum and posterior pharyngeal wall can be seen. This individual has a short palate, causing a constant opening between the oral and nasal cavities. The nasal voice quality which results can be easily perceived.
Children can see many animals at the zoo. They have camels and some fish and a large black bear. I think they even have a pig.
The degree of velopharyngeal closure necessary to prevent nasal quality varies, depending on the particular vowel being produced. It should be noted, however, that the presence of nasality does not affect the identity of the vowel. It can still be recognized as the same vowel sound.
Ah, ah. E, oo, ah, ah.
Velopharyngeal closure is important in speech for another reason, so that intraoral pressure can be impounded for consonant sound production. Stop plosive sounds, such as the T and the D, are produced by building up pressure behind a constriction in the vocal tract and then releasing this pressure. Fricative sounds, such as the S and the SH, also require a buildup of intraoral pressure so that air can be forced through a constriction between the tongue and palate. If the velopharyngeal port is not closed, adequate pressure for the production of many of these consonant sounds cannot be trapped in the oral cavity, since it escapes through the velopharyngeal port into the nasal cavities. This speaker first produces a normal S sound and then attempts to produce the same sound without velopharyngeal closure. A weak and distorted S results. The same type of distortion occurs when a speaker with a short palate attempts to produce the S sound. Thus, correct functioning of the velopharyngeal mechanism is necessary in the production of speech, both for the production of non-nasal voice quality and for impounding intraoral pressure required for consonant sound production. Closure of the velopharyngeal opening can be accomplished by movements of a number of structures. The most important movement in this closure during normal speech is elevation of the palate. The velum is pulled upward and backward by the palatal levator muscles. Since these muscles attach in the middle third of the velum, the middle section is elevated and retracted. As a result, the palate assumes a hooked appearance as it is raised. The middle of the velum contacts the posterior pharyngeal wall slightly above the anterior tubercle of the atlas. This contact effectively closes the velopharyngeal port. The appearance of the velum as it is elevated can be seen in cinefluorographic film prepared so that the actions are slowed. It also has been suggested that the back and side walls of the pharynx move inward to meet the elevated velum. Movements of the pharyngeal walls can be demonstrated by looking down on the pharyngeal tube, although this view is not practical for X-ray motion picture observations. As the palate is elevated, the size of the velopharyngeal opening also may be decreased by inward sphincteric action of the pharyngeal walls. In some individuals, movement of the posterior pharyngeal wall results in passavance pad, an inbulging of the wall at the level of the tubercle of the atlas. Passavance pad and extensive movements of the lateral pharyngeal walls are seldom observed in normal speakers, velopharyngeal closure being accomplished almost entirely by palatal movement. This can be contrasted to the operation of this mechanism during swallowing, where definite sphincteric action of the pharyngeal walls occurs.
When sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow. The rainbow is a division of white light into many beautiful colors. It takes the shape of a long round arch with its path high above and its two ends apparently beyond the horizon. There is, according to legend...
In these cinefluorographic films of normal speakers, the rapid and almost constant movement of the velopharyngeal structures during speech can be seen. The velum is raised and pulled backward to contact the posterior pharyngeal wall during most speech sounds. However, even when in contact, the velum is not motionless. It appears to oscillate against the pharyngeal. When consonants, such as M and N, occur in speech, the velum is lowered slightly so that the nasopharyngeal port is opened. During breaks between phrases, the port is also open to allow the subject to inhale. All of these rapid movements are synchronized with movements of the tongue and other articulatory structures. Thus, we have seen that velopharyngeal function during speech is complex. We have also seen that the correct functioning of this mechanism is necessary to produce speech which is intelligible and which is free of unacceptable voice qualities. This film is one of a series of 5 films. Other films in the series consider the speech sound articulation of normal speakers and physiological aspects of the speech of individuals with cleft palates, cerebral palsy, and functional articulatory disorders.